Okay, will do. As a preliminary matter, this is Judy Vetter, Chair of the Finance Committee. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mark Adler? Mark Adler?
Yo.
Thank you. Vikram Chabra?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Johnson Elnick? John's here. We'll come back to John. Aaron Howard?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hannah Kane?
Yes.
And Mark Murray was unable to be with us this evening. And Jordan Rubin? I don't believe Jordan's with us either this evening. And Pat Pitney has taken another position with the town on another committee, and so he has resigned from the Finance Committee. So he will not be with us tonight. Now, staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Mizikar?
Present.
Kristen Lass?
Present.
And I don't believe David Stone's with us, is he, this evening? No.
No,
Okay.
he's not.
All right. Well, good evening to you all. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting, the Finance Committee is convening by Google Hangouts as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see and to take care not to share your screen unless asked by the chairperson or the staff person. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Judy Vetter, will introduce each board member or staff member who has the lead role for the item or guest speaker associated with this item on the agenda. After they conclude the remarks, the chair will go down the line of members first and then to the staff members, inviting each by name to provide any comment or questions. I will then call upon the members to offer a motion and then for a second. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Remember that unless a document is being shared, your camera feed is triggered by your speaking or background noise. To mute and unmute your telephone, dial *6. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. So now I'm going to call the June 25th, 2020 Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is acceptance of the meeting minutes of March 7, 2020. So I'm going to go down through the roll call and see if there are any questions or comments on the meeting minutes? Mark Adler?
Yes, I have one comment to make, please. On page 2, under 10:03 a.m., the fourth of those paragraphs says Mr. Adler lamented that there was more time to talk. I suspect that I lamented that there was not more time to talk. So it's just one of those opposites of what it says. So I would like to move either to strike that paragraph entirely or to say that there was not more time to talk.
Test. Test. Okay. All right, how do I go back to mute?
Thank you, Mark.
It's not coming up.
So, Vikram, did you have any comments or questions on the meeting minutes?
No, Judy, I'm all set.
John? Did you have any questions or comments on the meeting minutes? I'll swing back to you. Aaron, did you have any questions or comments on the meeting minutes?
No, I just wanted to ask though, how do you want, if we have a question or something later, do you want us to raise our hand or what would you prefer?
Yeah, I think that's probably what you should do. What I'm going to do is, obviously on each subject, I'll go down through and ask if you have questions or comments. But if you have something, later on, please, just raise your hand. Just wave wildly at me and I'll try to do that.
Okay.
All right. Hannah?
I'm all set. Thank you.
All right. John, coming back to you. Did you have any questions or comments? Okay. Kevin, how do we want to handle the change to the meeting minutes that Mr. Adler mentioned?
Oh, wait. Oh, and Jordan's on as well. Sorry to interrupt. I was put on late.
Okay. Okay, Jordan. Thank you for joining us. Did you have any
Thank you.
or comments on the meeting minutes?
I do not.
Okay. So Kevin, how will we want to handle the change?
So we can make the change as requested by Mr. Adler by striking that sentence out of the minutes since that was his request. And then you could just take a motion to accept the minutes as revised.
Okay, can I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as revised?
I so move.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is do a roll call to accept the meeting minutes as revised. Mark Adler,
Aye.
Vikram,
Aye.
John. Okay, Aaron,
Aye.
Hannah,
Yes.
Jordan,
Aye.
and then Judy Vetter. Aye. So the meeting minutes of March 7th are accepted as amended. So take us to the next item, which are some review and act on, I guess we have 2 reserve fund transfers. Mr. Mizikar?
Yes, we do have 2 reserve fund transfers tonight. The first is a $15,000 reserve fund transfer request of the fire department. This would be added to the fire department's salary and wages area of their budget, the 123 section. The $15,000 request represents 0.6% of the total original budget amount. And this amount was necessary to cover events, incidents, and shift fills throughout the course of the year that were unanticipated at the start. So that's pretty much a summary of the first one. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Mark, do you have any questions or comments?
None.
Vikram, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Kevin, was this initiated any chance due to the COVID crisis? Any relation with that?
It is not related to that. We're able to cover some of those costs through our CARES Act funding, which we received. So those extra expenses are not impacting this amount.
Okay, thank you.
John, do you have any questions or comments?
No,
Okay, great. Aaron, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
Hannah, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
And Jordan, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't.
Okay, and Judy Vetter, I do not have any questions or comments. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the transfer as presented.
So moved.
So moved.
Moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so we're gonna do a roll call now to approve the transfer. Mark Adler,
Aye.
Vikram,
Aye.
John,
aye,
Aaron,
Aye.
Hannah,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Judy Vetter, aye. So it's been approved. The transfer has been approved. Mr. Misakar, we have a second transfer?
We do, yes. Sorry for the delay in getting this out to the committee. This was identified late this morning during a weekly finance meeting that I have with the town accountant and treasurer collector. This is a $40,000 request to be moved into the health insurance line item. The health insurance line item represents the town's contribution to employees' health insurance as the employer. The total budgeted amount in this line item was $11.9 million. The $40,000 request represents a third of 1% of the total original budgeted amount. Each year, not only do we budget for the total enrollment that we anticipate throughout the budget process, but we do add in a little bit of a buffer for additional new active and retirees. And unfortunately, even despite that little bit of buffer that we gave ourselves, we still came in 7 total plans over the original amount that we budgeted. So the $40,000 will make up that request and keep this line item out of deficit for the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Mark Adler, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
Vikram, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
John, do you have any questions or comments?
no,
Aaron, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
Anna, any questions or comments?
No.
Jordan, any questions or comments?
No, I don't.
Judy Vetter? No, I do not have any questions. Okay, so I would like a motion to approve the transfer.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so now I'm going to do a roll call to approve the transfer.
Excuse me, Judy, could I just get who made the second? If people are able to say their name when they make a motion or a second, that would be really helpful for the minutes.
This
Thank
is
you
Mark.
so
I
much.
seconded.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, so now I'm going to do the roll call for whether you're in favor of the transfer or not. Mark Adler,
Aye.
Vikram,
Aye.
John,
aye,
Aaron,
Aye.
Hannah,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
and Judy Vetter. Aye. So the transfer has been approved. All right, thank you. So that takes us now to the town manager's report. And we have several things, so I'll just turn that over to Mr. Misakar, if you would, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will share my screen and present a PowerPoint presentation at this time. Okay. So I wanted to start off and review with the Finance Committee some of the impacts and aid that has come into the town related to our response to COVID-19. I'll move through these quickly. If anyone's been following along with the Board of Selectmen meetings, there is some redundancy to that. There is one new item on this presentation that I just added this evening based upon guidance that was issued relative to the schools reopening for the fall. So we've received funding in 4 different categories thus far, or eligible for funding in 4 different categories. Very early on in the process, I think near the end of March or early April, the town was granted $27,000 for enhancing our public health services. This came in through a grant from the Public Health Trust and was filtered through the city of Worcester, who provides our public health services. And those funds were divided up into 4 or 5 different categories, again, to be able to prepare for our response for COVID-19 and augment our current our staffing levels and time that we spend working in response. So we've spent a great deal of those funds, still have some left. Given some of the categories, will likely turn some of those back or determine if we're able to retain those for other purposes for public health. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, issued disaster relief funding based upon the disaster declaration, and the town will be eligible for 75% reimbursement of eligible costs. And those costs fall within the public safety and public health categories. The town is responsible for a 25% match for those funds. We're very familiar with this type of funding from the federal government. It's the same format that's used during a snowstorm. Although the challenge with this is that there's a rolling application period, given that there's no finite timeline for this event. So this has been not necessarily a new challenge, but a challenge to stay on top of. And Deputy Chief Seth Colby, who's the Emergency Management Director, and Assistant Town Manager Lass has stayed on top of this and really managed this process on behalf of the town. The third category is CARES Act funding, which is a federal program that was filtered through the state. The town was eligible for a $90 per capita share of the $502 million that the state earmarked for cities and towns. That $90 per capita led to a allotment of a little over $3.3 million in eligible funding for the town. And those funds are required to be used at this point for events between March 1st and December 31st of 2020. We are able to use CARES Act funding for costs that fall outside of FEMA disaster relief, and we can use it for the 25% FEMA match requirement. There are 2 rounds of funding. The first application period was due June 5th. And the town applied for and received $918,844. That covered expenses that we had incurred from March 1st through May 31st and projected expenses from June 1st through June 30th. So we have those funds in hand. They're rapidly deployed from the state down to the municipality after our application, roughly within 10 business days. The balance of the funding, roughly $2.4 million, still remains eligible to the town, and additional application periods have yet to be determined, but it's my understanding that they'll be on a bi-monthly basis where the town will submit for the prior month and then look forward 1 month and continue on that cycle through the end of the calendar year. We're still planning for the use of those funds, although I can tell you that from a broad brush standpoint, the reopening costs and preventative measures will be much more expensive to the town than the costs are direct response to the pandemic. Schools are eligible to use these funds as well, and their request for the first application period was roughly 50% of the funds that we received. And the vast majority of those requests were used to enhance and prepare for remote learning in the fall. We also will use those funds to enhance services to residents. We are cognizant and concerned that as some of the enhanced federal initiatives that go directly to residents and taxpayers begin to end in the middle of the summer and into the fall, that if unemployment levels remain where they are in the double digits and are prolonged into the fall and the winter, We are concerned about food security and other general necessities that residents may need direct assistance for, and we're preparing and planning for those, both for the elder population and anyone that would need those type of services. As I mentioned previously, earlier today, the administration issued guidance on reopening schools this fall. Part of that guidance released includes a per pupil amount from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, $225 per pupil. That would provide roughly $1.4 million into the schools to help them prepare to meet the challenges of having a safe in-school environment and also enhance remote learning capabilities. You probably heard, but they are charged with developing 3 plans simultaneously, one for in-person, a hybrid model for in-person and remote, and then a full remote learning environment. Moving on, I wanted to update the committee about the status of local receipts for fiscal year 20. We've certainly seen levels lower than maybe we ever have through the spring with regards to local receipts. For May 2020, across all local receipt areas, we received slightly over $672,000. In May 2019, we received over $1.2 million. That's a 46% year-over-year reduction. And the same through earlier this week on June 22nd, we had only received $443,000. And in June of 2019, we received over 1.7. So if you extrapolate out the amount that we received through the 22nd, estimating a 60% year-over-year reduction. Now, taxpayer relief was issued through the Board of Selectmen in accordance with the provisions passed through the legislature and signed into law by the governor. But we do not, we're kind of running out of time. So residents were able to delay any bills that were due without interest or penalty if they're paid by June 30th. I certainly would have expected that in both of those months, we would have received higher levels of returns. And definitely at this point in June, I'm surprised that we haven't even achieved 50% of the funding that we did year over year. With motor vehicle excise tax particularly, I can tell the committee that we've only collected about 90% of what we've billed thus far this fiscal year. It's very uncharacteristic for motor vehicle excise. With having, in a normal year, we're really close to the upper 90s, if not 100% at this point in the year with all of the items that we've billed and our capability to demand those bills and encourage taxpayers to make those payments. So in summary, for local receipts fiscal year to date, we've collected $11.7 million. So we have achieved our budget mark, and that is good news. However, that $11.7 million is over $1.3 million less than fiscal year 2019. That's our lowest since fiscal year 2016. I took a snapshot in time of what we collected through the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year in local receipts. And at that time, if we had continued on that pace over the last 3 months, we'd have collected almost $2 million additional dollars than we have collected thus far. And I know the committee's aware, but I think this is just a really great time to remind and emphasize the critical steps that we've made in changing our policies and approaches to reserves in the community. If you recall our final rating by Moody's, they cautioned the town and said that your reliance upon free cash is only as good as your ability to continue to replenish free cash every year, and encouraged us to move more funds into our stabilization account. That's the process that we started with fiscal year 2019, and we're really in mid-process. Having a huge down year like this, where we're not going to produce a significant amount of free cash, is really going to challenge the reserves in the town and stymie our ability to achieve our policy goals of having at least 5% in our stabilization account as it relates to the total general fund budget. So with regards to revenue, just one more slide, and then I will pause and ask the chair if there may be any questions from the rest of the committee. Our utility revenue also has me significantly concerned. I was quite surprised by this. So I ran some initial financial projections in early April. I honestly kind of brushed off utility revenue, thinking that ratepayers would continue to pay those outstanding amounts, and we would not have any real struggles to achieve our budgeted revenue estimates, but I was clearly wrong. As you can see, these numbers are through June 22nd, just like the local receipts revenue analysis on the previous slide. And in solid waste, water, and sewer, we're in the mid to low 90% collection rate. Oftentimes for water and sewer, based upon our budgeted amount, we exceed our budgeted revenue estimate, just like we do in local receipts. So I'm extremely concerned about this. We've really turned over every rock that we could on the financial side to ensure that we aren't missing batches, and there's no real anomalies in the way we're reporting this. And unfortunately, there are not. So there's just a significant amount of money still outstanding that ratepayers have yet to pay to the town. So that's my well, actually, if I could go through one more slide, that'll kind of wrap up fiscal year 20 and before we start a discussion about fiscal year 21. So late last week, the administration indicated that to municipalities through the Department of Revenue that for July and August, in the absence of a state budget, that we should anticipate level state aid for those 2 months. So that is good news, but obviously is only a commitment, and state aid continues to be the biggest question, being our second highest revenue category as we look to develop a prudent spending plan and revenue model for fiscal year 21. On the other side of that coin, it was kind of a knock to our further ability to plan and actually receive revenues, where the administration further delayed payments from hotel and motel and restaurants for their excise taxes, well, for their total taxes, but including their excise taxes that ultimately filter down to municipalities until September 20th. So that's going to have a significant impact on the total amount of local receipts that we receive. And while I don't anticipate, even if these funds do come in September, that being a significant amount, so it's not going to have that big of impact, it would have been nice to be able to book those in fiscal year 20 and also just understand what impact and how severe the impact is on restaurants and hotel and motel. We know it will be quite severe, but it would be good just to have a reference point in comparison to prior years as we think about what's prudent for fiscal year 21. Earlier in June, the Board of Selectmen submitted a 1-month authorization to deficit spend technically that was approved by the Department of Revenue within a few days of submission, and that totaled over $18 million, and we'll get into that on the next slide. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions from the committee through the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mizikar. Mark Adler, do you have any questions or comments?
I have a question about the last slide, the talk about the utilities. The revenue is short, and that's not from, is that from poor collections or from just, it's not from less use in the solid waste, water, and sewer?
It is not from less use. No, water consumption has actually been greater on a month-by-month basis on average, especially over the past few weeks with the very hot, dry conditions. We've seen a significant spike in our daily withdrawals, and residential consumption was up year over year for both April and May.
And also, why is the stormwater more than, whereas the others are less than? I mean, why was that one collection kind of odd?
I would attribute the stormwater, this is the first year of stormwater rates being in effect, and we're very conservative with our budget estimate. So that's benefited us at this time. We set a 5-year rate. This is year 1 of that rate, and we're very conservative with our budget estimate. And any excess funds will just roll over to retained earnings for it. So we're a little closer to what we actually thought we budgeted a little closer to what we thought we'd actually achieve in the other 3 categories.
Okay, thank you.
Vikram?
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Kevin. That was a great presentation, and thank you for all the work you're doing through all these troubled times. Just a continued question or a comment on what Mark raised about the collection. I was just wondering, is there any data that can correlate it with any rise in unemployment in the town, or do you have any insight, or if something, does it point to something that could get worse as we go deeper into this problem?
I definitely think there's a strong correlation between the current unemployment levels. We've never seen unemployment levels in the double digits, which they are in town now. I think the highest, even during the two most recent recessionary periods, were only 7 to 9%. So it's not surprising. It's just kind of difficult, to deal with. Just like individuals are struggling, it's difficult to deal with revenues this low, and really challenges us in putting a plan in place for fiscal year 21.
Any further questions, Vikram, or
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Judy.
Johnson Elnick? John, you need to unmute.
There you go.
It's not working for me, but anyway, I really don't have any questions, I guess. I guess if I do, on the water and sewer, were they allowed to defer their payments until June 30th?
Yes. Any bill that had a due date of March 10th or later are able to defer interest-free, penalty-free if payments are made by June 30th.
So theoretically, we could get a bunch of revenue in the last week here.
Yes, we could.
I guess, could you let us know if that happens?
Absolutely. I definitely will.
Okay, I'm all set.
All right. Thank you, John. Aaron?
No questions.
Okay, thanks. Hannah?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Jordan? Jordan, do you have a question or comment?
Oh, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think I'm all set also with questions, because that was my, I guess if they've got until June 30th, and then I guess the one question I do have is what's the so hopefully it all comes in, but what is the plan for attempting to encourage payment?
Well, the biggest underlying matter that taxpayers and ratepayers have to consider is that tax penalties and interest will accrue back to the original due date. So if you had a motor vehicle excise tax bill that was due on March 11th and you've decided not to pay it, and you don't make that payment on or prior to June 30th, you will incur all interest and penalties from the original due date. So penalties and interest have been accruing from the due date on. So for the property taxes, they've been accruing from June 1st on, and every other bill is accruing from whatever its original due date was. We've actually demanded motor vehicle excise bills. So taxpayers would not be required to pay the demand fee, but we were trying to provide, basically a second notice to those ratepayers to encourage them to pay them within this fiscal year. And after July 1st, we would send out additional notices to anyone that hadn't made the payments through that point to seek collection.
Okay. And is there anything in place? I mean, if someone just refuses to pay their motor vehicle excise tax, are there levers to pull?
So on the motor vehicle excise tax, ultimately beyond penalties and interest, individuals are marked for non-renewal at the registry. So anytime they need to transact matters with the State Department of Motor Vehicles, or they would not be able to do so until they come to the town and pay that fee. And then with water and sewer bills, they would be leaned to the property taxes. So ultimately, in the end, the revenue will come to the town, but if anyone has the ability to pay, there's certainly an incentive to do that, and before June 30th.
All right. Well, that's good information. Thank you. So, and you have more slides to share?
I do. Yep. I'm going to transition over into some of the thoughts for fiscal year 21 at this point. So as I most previously mentioned during my comments on the prior slide, the Board of Selectmen authorized submission of an $18.2 million budget to the state for town expenses for July of 2020. This includes operating expenses for the general fund and all enterprise funds. With regards to the general fund, it was a $16.9 million submission. For town and operating support, which benefits both town and schools, a little over 5.3. Schools requested $5.5 million, and debt service payments due within the month of July are almost $6.1 million. With regards to enterprise funds, they make up the balance, or almost a little over $1.2 million. And I've broken those various enterprise funds out below that. So that was submitted to the Department of Revenue for approval. They promptly approved that. So we have set up our financial system for that 1 month increment, and we are preparing for the start of the new fiscal year under this 1/12 budget model. If we take pretty much the premise of that single month's budget, the underlying revenue model, based upon our current thinking, will require us to reduce total revenue anticipated by 2.53%, or almost $3.7 million. That roughly breaks out into a reduction of our anticipated new growth through the property tax, an estimated reduction in state aid of roughly 6.4%, or $1.5 million. A reduction in local receipts of over, I should back up, all these figures are in comparison to what we had previously brought to the Finance Committee for fiscal year 21 through your late February and early March budget hearings. So this is a $11.3 million reduction in local receipts, and a total spending reduction of free cash of $776,000. I do want to note that we had previously anticipated taking $835,000 from free cash and move it into the stabilization fund. And as everyone knows, the stabilization fund is the rainy day fund and is used for emergent dire conditions, and we're certainly experiencing that right now. So rather than move that free cash into the stabilization account, we are planning to use that $835,000 within the operating budget itself. Prior to that, we had a little over $400,000 of free cash that was dedicated to the operating budget. So that's a 267% increase, but certainly critical because of the challenges that we face even utilizing that amount of money. So with regards to expenditures in general, the general fund is currently estimated at about $124 million, or $2.15 million less than we brought to the committee through fiscal projection 1 in the late winter. Our non-utility capital improvement plan is down to $1.1 million, down, as I previously mentioned, $750,000, just in order to preserve some of those funds that we have and in our reserve accounts. With regards to the general fund operating budgets, at a high level, we're seeking to reduce debt service and operating support area of the budget, which totals about $28 million by a little less than 0.2% or $51,000. Obviously, there's very little discretion or no discretion at all in our debt service obligations. We're required to make those payments. We've obligated the town to do those in good times and bad. And within the operating support, we were able to reduce some lines, but we also had to increase some lines. For instance, unemployment insurance falls within operating support. We had previously anticipated budgeted $90,000 for that area, and we've increased that by $110,000 to $200,000. I can tell you because they hit my email and a number of other employees' emails. Our unemployment claims are several per week, probably up to 15 or 20 per week over the last 8 to 12 weeks. So we're definitely seeing high unemployment, and we have obligations as an employer to cover our current employees who may have been furloughed or laid off, and then those who were in our employ previously within the most recent quarters, and we still have an obligation to make payments to the state on their behalf. There is relief on the unemployment side where we would be credited back up to 50% of our required coverage costs for unemployment bills, but we do have to budget the full amount and then receive reimbursement back from the state at some point. With regards to the two other major categories within the operating budget, the school, my number, the town manager's number for the school department includes $1.2 million in less funding than was included in our plans to you earlier this calendar year. It's a 1.7% reduction over what I had previously budgeted for the schools. And then with regards to the rest of the town and municipal operations, we've reduced those expenditures by $895,000 or 3.16% over what was presented to you. So that concludes my slides. It's a sneak peek at fiscal year 21. Obviously, we'll have a lot of conversations about how we review the new budget requests once we're able to firm that up and move towards a town meeting date. And we'll go through all those details with you once we have more clarity when we're going to do so. So I'm happy to take any questions through the chair again.
Thank you, Mr. Mizikar. Mark Adler, did you have any questions or comments?
Just on, yes, thank you. Just on the slide labeled current thinking, it's like slide 7 or something. Does that, it doesn't mention regular levy tax collection. Do I assume that that is assumed as stable?
Yes, as far as property taxes, we are estimating as we are able to do 100% of, the same amount that we did going into the fiscal year. We have reduced the new growth, as you can see there, because we think there'll be less improvements and new construction within the community throughout the course of the year. But the standing stable property tax base, is a clear benefit to the town. A lot of other municipalities and other aspects of the country rely upon tax bases that are much more volatile to overall economic conditions like sales tax and other non-property taxes. So we have the benefit of having the more stable property tax. So we're able to keep that core part of our revenue plan in place.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Vikram, do you have a question or comment?
No, Judy, I'm all set.
Thank you. John, question or comment? John, you need to unmute.
Hi, my unmute button isn't working very good. Anyway, I got a couple questions on the current thinking section. Is the stabilization, the 835, I should say, is the free cash the minus number net of the 835? Or is that including the 835? In other words,
Yep.
is the
It
776?
includes the it includes the 835.
All right.
So the 835 was always in the expenditure plan. It was just being moved to the stabilization account.
Right.
So rather than going to stabilization, it'll just be included in the budget article.
Okay. So the real number is that I was questioning whether the 3,000,006 would be reduced by the 800. I guess the
No.
answer to that is no.
That's correct. It's no.
Okay. I guess the only comment I would make is on local receipts. Usually we budget conservatively and have money to roll into free cash the following year, as we talked about from 2020 going into 2021. So theoretically, this will put a big damper on 2022 with the local receipts coming in even $1.3 million below the budget. I think that creates a serious problem for 2022 even.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, John. This is not a conservative revenue estimate from that standpoint. It is much closer to actuals and something that we're going to have to monitor throughout the course of the year. If we were following the old model, we'd almost have to cut that by another $1 million and, pretty much to produce the free cash that we would anticipated. So we use the hard times to be closer to our, budget to actuals and then move forward from there in the future.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure we all understood that.
Yep.
By 2022, we may not be out of this.
Correct.
All right. All set.
Thank you, John. Aaron, do you have a question or comment?
No questions.
Thank you. Hannah, do you have a question or comment?
I don't, thank you.
Jordan, do you have a question or comment?
I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, and I don't have any questions or comments either. So thank you very much for that presentation. Kristen, I didn't mean to ignore you previously. Do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Not at this time, thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, so that I guess it takes us next to, is that the options for the annual town meeting, Mr. Mizikar?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base with the committee. I'm sure most of you have seen that the Board of Selectmen and moderator had a conversation at the meeting on Tuesday night, the Board of Selectmen meeting on Tuesday night, and town meeting will be delayed from its original date of June 29th to July 29th. And honestly, I believe that it will be delayed one additional time. The assistant town manager and I had a conversation yesterday afternoon with Dr. Michael Hirsch from the city of Worcester to talk about what our approach should be to town meeting. He's strongly urging that we consider an outside venue. And that's something that we really hadn't done. We were planning for to hold the meeting in the field house and have folks equally or appropriately distanced. He really encouraged us to look for outside venues, so we're reviewing that. We also, he also was giving us a status update on just the general infection rate in the community. And while we are headed in the right direction generally, large gatherings such as a representative town meeting of our size, when you include the staff and, it would be a large number of people in a single place. So delaying that a little bit beyond the end of July and finding the right venue will put us in the best position. So we're focused on doing that. That being said, unlike previous Julys, I would anticipate one or more meetings of the Finance Committee during this month. and during the month of July, including potentially public hearings near the end if we're moving towards a town meeting in the middle of August. The school administration has indicated that having a solid budget plan in place that's passed for the year, giving them a solid foundational starting point for the school year would be critical. So I do anticipate have the meeting prior to the end of August, and we'll do so in mid to early August if we're able to get everything lined up. So we'll certainly keep you posted, but we'd look to have some additional meetings coming up near the end of July for the committee. That is why we didn't do our normal delay of reorganization and put in certain amounts for the chair and vice chair to authorize for the reserve fund transfers if any are needed, because we anticipate meeting this coming month.
Okay, thank you. Mark Adler, do you have any questions or comments?
None, thank you.
Vikram, any questions or comments?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
John, any questions or comments? John, you need to unmute your mic.
Nope, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, any questions or comments?
No, thank you.
Hannah, questions, comments?
All set, thank you.
Jordan?
All set, thank you.
And Kristen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
All set, thank you. We'll just be advising you of additional meetings through the calendar invites and the agenda invites and whatnot. So we'll make sure that you're well informed.
Thank you. All right, so that takes us to the next item, which is discuss the committee's plans for reviewing the revised budget and holding public hearings on the annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Mizikart, I think you sort of touched on that.
Yeah,
I'll
there's there's not really more that I can provide to you as far as concrete dates. But, I would, have you think about potentially having more meetings and hearings. We can have some discussions offline and get a sense of the committee on how you would like us to represent the budget to you and what level of detail. And then, you'll obviously need to consider, your final hearings on both the budget and both the budget article and the other town meeting warrant articles, as you would have normally done towards the end of April. So I would anticipate that happening again near the one of the last 2 weeks in the month of July.
Okay, thank you. Mark Adler, questions, comments?
No, thank you.
Vikram, questions, comments?
No, thank you.
John, questions, comments?
Nope.
Aaron?
No.
Hannah?
No, thank you.
Jordan?
Nope, all set.
And yeah, I think it is interesting because it does seem like the impact is going to be fairly substantial. It does seem like we are going to need to go back through the budget, probably not at the same, hopefully not at the same level of depth, but definitely to understand the impact to the departments and so forth. I would really like to see another presentation of that myself.
If I could just add, I was thinking, maybe rather than holding your 2 normal hearings, if we can't fit it into 2 hearing nights, we could plan for a third and do those sequentially, even, a few nights in a row if the committee's available, just to get through those in a condensed period of time rather than doing 1 night a week or something like that. So we'll lay out a schedule and make a proposal to you as soon as we can get things finalized.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Kristen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
All set, thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, so that takes us to the review and discussion of the Finance Committee report and recommendation. So I gather with the impacts, obviously it's going to impact our report. So at this point, I mean, I guess if we're going to be pushing the town meeting out, we would need to have that report done sometime in the July timeframe. So it would be good if we could have our budget review, around that time, or prior to a meeting to have the report finalized. Mr. Mizikar, do you have any, or Christian, any thoughts on that?
No, I think you're right. I would think if you targeted, if I had to look at a schedule tonight and pick a date, you'd really want to target around July 24th or early in the week of the 27th. So I think, again, those last 2 weeks could be very busy weeks for the committee. And we do still intend to, at least at this point, turn a full town meeting book around. We will also be doing more enhanced presentations in advance of the town meeting through SMC and pre-recording to make sure our time at town meeting once we get there is as limited as possible. Certainly answer any questions from anyone, any town meeting member or the committee as we go through the process, but our goal will be to provide significant information in advance to reduce our time on site.
Thank you. Mark Adler, do you have any questions or comments?
No, none. Thank you.
Vikram?
All set, Judy.
John?
Nope, all set.
Aaron?
No,
Hannah?
Thanks.
Jordan?
All set. Thank you.
Christian, anything you'd like to add?
All set. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this takes us to the correspondence that were received by the Finance Committee. It was an email from Sandy Fritz, a school committee chair, regarding the fiscal year 2021 superintendent's budget recommendation. Email from Representative Kane regarding Baker Polito administration files legislation to address challenges faced by municipalities, school districts during COVID-19 outbreak. Email from Representative Kane regarding COVID-19 economic impact. Email from Representative Kane regarding COVID-19 elections legislation, H4768. Email from Representative Kane regarding municipal elections and municipal governments legislation. Email from Representative Kane regarding transportation bond build update. Email from Representative Kane regarding an update on the COVID-19 state actions in the Baker Polito administration emergency order modifying the state's open meeting law. Email from Kevin Mizikar, town manager, regarding update on the annual town meeting. Email from Kevin Mizikar, town meeting, regarding update CARES Act funding and fiscal year 21 budget. Email from Representative Kane regarding the governor's state regarding fiscal year 21 local aid. Email from Representative Kane regarding economic outlook. Email from Representative Kane regarding fiscal 21 tax transfer analysis. Email from Representative Kane regarding the passing of HB 4598 on municipal governance in the House and Senate. Email from Representative Kane regarding S2680 municipal governance assistance bill. Sorry. Email from Representative Kane regarding the UGGA and Chapter 70 budget. Email from Representative Kane regarding an update on state budget outlook. An email from Mr. Mizikar, town manager, regarding financial impacts of COVID-19. Email from Kevin Mizikar, town manager, regarding presentation for BOS meeting. Email from Pat Pitney, finance committee member, regarding finance committee letter of resignation. And I want to actually take this moment to thank Pat for all of his years of service on the finance committee. And it's too bad Hannah can't send us more mail. Thank you, Hannah.
I've already got the town manager giving me a hard time about it. Thank you.
Actually, yeah, all joking aside, thank you though for keeping the committee updated on things. It's very informative and very appreciative.
Thank you.
So at this moment, then can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Hold on, Judy. Wait. Judy,
sorry.
wait, please.
Okay.
Is this John's last meeting?
We are going to reorganize the committee in July, so
But John's term is up next week, isn't it?
The answer to that question is no.
Yay!
I've had a couple conversations, I should say Chris Maynard called me, and there's some statute somewhere in regards to something called a holdover. So basically, he and I have agreed to keep me here until we complete the budget process, hopefully within the next couple months. So the goal is to have me hang around for 1 to 2 more months, and then I will be replaced. That answer your question?
all right.
Glad
Any
you-
other
Nice to have you with us, John.
comments from the committee or the staff before we move? Before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Judy, this is Hannah. I would just like to echo your sentiments about Patrick Pitney's service to the Finance Committee, his 9 years. I really want to thank him for that, and very happy that he has also stepped up to be on the new committee formed to deal with the police station building. So thank you to him for his long service.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, anyone else? All right, well, at this point, I'm going to once again request a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. Hannah.
Can I get a second?
Second, Vikram.
This is Mark seconding.
Okay, so that was seconded by Vikram. Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded, and now I'm going to do a roll call. Mark Adler,
Aye.
Vikram,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Hannah,
Aye.
Jordan,
Aye.
Judy Vetter, aye. That adjourns the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
Aye.